Welcome back. Alright, so my mic's mostly going to be on mute today, but I'm going to be working through the next couple tutorials just to make sure that you guys have some checkpoints to be able to get to. Alright, so first one I'm working on is going to be number 9, parallax scrolling. Parallax scrolling, really cool effect. You've definitely seen it in a lot of different games. If you're curious on what I use, it's the same tutorial that you guys use, except you don't have to hear the Australian guy do it, you can just watch me do it. And I'm just going to turn my mic off, put back on the music. Bye guys.
If you're interested in making tiles, for this tutorial we're going to add a background, and we're also going to make the background scroll. And we're going to scroll the background at a different speed to what the player is moving, and we call that parallax scrolling. Now if you haven't already, please like and subscribe the video, and also if you want to see anything done in drag and drop, leave a comment down below. So the first thing I want to do is change the colour of the background. So let's go over and make sure it's on the background layer, on the colour, and I'm going to give you the hex value of the colour that I want to use, and it's 2B5754. And the reason I've chosen that colour is it matches I want to use. And it's 2B5754. And the reason I've chosen that colour is it matches the colour of the background that we're going to use. Now the image we'll be using is called S Background Trees. You'll find it in the description below in the sprite pack. And once again, this is taken from the Open Pixel Project website. There's a link to that site down below as well. Now I'm just going to drag the image in and drop it in GameMaker, and that will then create a new sprite. So once you drag that in, that's all you need to do. Close it down. And if we go back to our room, we can now add a new background layer. So just here, add a new layer. And I'm going to call it background underscore trees. So because we've got a white colour here, that's why we've now lost the background colour of this one. But we want to have an image for this one. So let's choose sprite and pick our tree. And now it comes up there at the top. And what we want to do is make sure we're stretching it horizontally. And also I'm going to change the offset, and that's where it sits up and down. I'm going to set this at 100. And that'll just bring it down in line with the base. Now if we click play, we can see what that will look like. So now when we move, we have a background, but the background is static. It doesn't move at all. So let's go and create the parallax effect. So I want to do that inside OGame. So let's go into there, and let's create a step event. Now remember, a step event will run every
Bye-bye.
every step of the game. Now the layer functions I want to use to move the background are not available in the code blocks. So in order to do this, we need to use some GML, some GameMaker language. So if we go over here to the execute code block and drag that in, we do need to type this code out manually. So let's do it now. We're going to have this for our background scrolling. Firstly, we're going to get the layer ID. Each layer has its own ID, so let's grab the one for the background trees. And I'm going to store it in a temporary variable. So just like when we declare temporary variables, we can do that in code, and we do it with the prefix var. So we're going to say layer ID is equal to layer get ID of, and here's where we put the name of the layer. So we can say background underscore trees. Now make sure your spelling is correct. There's no autocomplete on layer name, so you need to make sure you type it in correctly. So that'll get our layer ID. Now I'm going to create another variable. I'm going to set the scroll speed. And this is how quickly the background will scroll. Now the speed is set anywhere from 0 to 1, but if you have it at 1, you won't get a parallax effect. So let's create another temporary variable. I'm going to call it scroll speed. And I'm going to set it to 0.7. Now when I'm typing, you'll notice I'm also placing a semicolon at the end. You don't actually need it, but it is good coding practice to put that in GameMaker. And you'll also get this little mark indicating there's something wrong, and the only reason that's appearing is because I'm not using this variable anywhere else in GameMaker, just making you aware that you're only using this variable once at the moment. So you can basically ignore that for the moment. So now let's say we want to move the layer. Now in order to move the layer, I'm going to change the X position of the layer, and we can do that with layer underscore X. Now it shows you down here what it expects us to type in for the function. So it needs the layer ID, so we've already found that, it's called layer underscore ID, and now it needs the X position that we want to put it at. So as a test, let's get the X position of the camera. And we can do that with camera get view underscore X. And we want to get the view of which camera? Well, the camera we created, which was down here in the last lesson. And it's actually called view underscore camera square bracket 0 square bracket. Close that. And if I highlight the bracket, you can see that this bracket belongs to this one. It lights up. This one doesn't have anything yet, so you've got to make sure that each bracket has another corresponding closing bracket. Now, if I run that, what we're going to see is that the camera is going to pan at the same speed as the background. So the background moves the same as the player moves. There's no parallax, it's just moving the same. So we don't want that. We want it to move not as quickly as the camera. So we can do that by saying let's move it at a percentage of the camera, and that's why we created the scroll speed. So instead of the full value of the camera, let's move it at only 70%. And we can find it by the scroll speed to set it at 70%. So let's run that and see what happens then. And now when we move, the background only scrolls at 7%. That looks great. Now you can play around with your speed, but remember one means there's no scrolling. And if you have multiple layers for your background, you can have the ones that are closer to you scroll faster than the ones in the distance. Now that's all for this tutorial. If you're interested in more GML, my tile-based course over at Udemy is all on position it horizontally. And also I'm going to change the offset, and that's where it sits up and down. I'm going to set this at 100. And that'll just bring it down in line with the base. Now if we could play, we can see what that will look like.
Gonna win.
Okay, probably looking like the same thing that I am. Obviously, that parallax scroll doesn't seem to actually be working. So I'm trying out a couple different things to see if that's actually doing anything. First things first, let's go back to this double jump button mode. I'm gonna kind of tweak scroll speed real quick. So currently we're setting it to 0.7. Let's set it to somewhere ludicrous. 0.1. Let's see what that does. Still, honestly, looks exactly the same. It looks like they're kind of moving at the exact same rate. Not really any parallax there. Okay, so what if we just put it up to like 1.5? We're gonna multiply it. Not quite, but I will say, I don't know if it's my computer or if it's this program. Something seems to be kind of slowed down. Put this back to 0.7 for now, just to have it as the correct thing versus what the game has. This is interesting. Let me go check through the video, like we all should, and see if I maybe missed something. I think it might have been in scroll speed. Let's see.
Now if we click play, we can see what that will look like. So now when we move, we have a background, but the background is static. It doesn't move at all. So let's go and create the parallax effect. But I want to do that inside OGame. So let's go into there. And let's create a step event. Now remember, a step event will run every step of the game. Now the layer functions I want to use to move the background are not available in the code blocks. So in order to do this, we need to use some GML, some GameMaker language. So if we go over here to
you know I love owning up to my own mistakes. I think I pretty much found it. It's right here. So I put backgrounds trees. Clearly I was calling background trees in my code. I bet this is gonna work now. Much better. Look at that parallax scroll, baby. Not bad. So yeah, I'm gonna restart my closed circuit. And just for grins and giggles, let's mess around with the parallax scrolling code. So we're at 0.7 now. What happened if we're at 0.1? smooth transition. I like it. I think that could be used for like multiple backgrounds. Okay, and we're gonna go ludicrous stuff as well. So let's do 1.5. Absolutely jarring. I hate this. This is actually giving me some like vertigo or something. But honestly, not a terrible idea to experiment with. So if I go this way, it goes there. If I go backwards, it loops around that way. Yeah, this would be like a good like Sonic 2 bonus stage type thing. I like it. What if we just did something like... Okay, so we know 0.7 is what we're at. What if we did like 0.9? So we're not necessarily moving that opposite direction, but we're moving at a pretty different speed. It's just barely different, which probably makes sense given that, you know, the default scroll speed is 1. So let's do our scroll speed don't need 2 decimals, 0.09. What up, don't look at me. Alright, 0.09 scroll speed also doesn't look too different. It's still getting the parallax, but it's not too different. The other thing I feel like testing is, let's do like, I don't know, 0.1. Or, well, let's see, 0.001. Huge change. Apparently not very huge change. Okay, let's set it back to what the video wants us to do. 0.7. There it goes. It does look a little janky on my end. Some of that is the fault of maybe my laptop is probably on fire right now. The other fault of that being, I want to say it's probably going in increments of 1, where it needs to be going in decimals. So that's something I think they figure in the next video. Alright, back to mic off. Also, yeah, what up, don't look at me. Thank you for the hype music compliment. And we'll turn it back on.
If you're interested in making a detailed platformer, just let's give the player the ability to jump on the enemy's head and the enemy. So the first thing I want to do is drag in an if statement. And I want to make sure that the enemy is not already dead, because we don't want any interaction if the enemy is already dead. So we need to check the state of the enemy and make sure it's not in a dead state. So if I write state here, this variable that's checking is the state variable of the object that is running it, which is the player. But I want to check the state of the enemy. And when you're in a collision event, to check the other instances variables, you can use the word other. So I'm going to say other.state, and that refers to the enemy's state variable. So if we look at the state variable, the enemy, and if it is not equal to the dead state, we haven't created this as yet, and it's going to be enemy state, so es.dead. So if the enemy is not dead, then we want to have some sort of interaction with the player. So let's have another check here. And let's go and have a look quickly at the enemy. So here's the current mask for the enemy. Now we want to be able to jump on the enemy's head. To deal damage. So we need to look at, say, this section above, and say if the player has interacted with this section up here, well then the player has jumped on the enemy's head. So the limits of the mask all the way around the outside are called the V-box values. So this is V-box top, V-box right, V-box bottom, and V-box left. And we can refer to these to know if the players landed up the top up here. So let's go. Go back to the player, and let's look at the variable of the player, the V-box bottom. And if the player's V-box bottom, if that is greater than the enemy's V-box top, so other.V-box top, let's say plus 10. So other V-box top plus 10. So we go back to the enemy, this is the V-box top, and we're doing plus 10, and when we plus, we actually go down in GameMaker. So plus 10 is about down here somewhere. So if the player's V-box bottom is anywhere above this line, well then we interacted with the enemy's head. So back down the player. So if that's true, that means the player did interact with the enemy's head, but we also want to make sure that the player is moving down. So they're actually falling on the enemy's head and not just going upwards. So how do we know if we're going down? Well, our VSP is going to be greater than 0. Now if that's the case, we're actually hitting the enemy in the head. Let's set our VSP, can close this down. We'll set our VSP to be minus jump speed. So we'll actually get a jump and bounce off the enemy. So that's the player sorted. Now what do we need to do to the enemy if this happens? Let's go up a little bit. Well, first we need to change them into the dead state. And when they're in the dead state, they're going to play this animation, which is of them dying. So one of the first things we do is we need to put them back to their first image index so that they can play the animation correctly. Because when you change states, it doesn't reset the image index. We've got to do that ourselves. So let's assign an instance variable. And we want to change the image index and we'll put it back to 0. And we also want to make sure they're not walking anymore because we want them to stop and then fall over. So let's also assign the HSP to be 0 as well. Now the last thing we need to do is we need to change their state. We need to put them into that dead state. So let's change their state variable to enemy state.dead. So these three changes are all related to the enemy and not related to the player. And as I've got them there now, they will all change the player's variables because we're not using other. I didn't use other. And the reason I didn't use other is I wanted to show you something else you can use. So if we go here, there's a apply to code block. We're going to drag it over and just put it below the VSP assign. And what you can do with this is apply multiple changes to another instance. So if we change it here and say it applies to other, and then we drag all of these under, those changes now will happen for the other, which is the enemy. So it's really handy, so you don't have to use multiple others, you can just do an apply to, and it applies to the other for everything here. Alright, so let's go and create this dead state for the enemy. So let's go to the enemy, and let's go to their step event. And at the moment we only have one case for our state, and that's enemy state.walk. So let's create another case, and this one's going to be enemy state.dead. Now what do we want to do in this state? Well, what's going to happen is we're changing to this, and when we press play, the enemy's falling down. But what happens is they will fall down, and then they'll get back up, and they'll fall down, and the enemy... animation will continue to play. So we need a way to make sure that the animation stops after it plays once. So let's have a look firstly at the image index. So we need to monitor the image index value. And when it is equal to the final image index for that sprite, then we need to stop our image speed so that it stops animating. So let's look at our image index, and we need to know when it's greater than the final image index value. Now another variable you can use is image underscore number, and that is the number of images in the sprite. Now image number will always be one more than how many sub-images you have in your sprite. So if the sprite has 3 sub-images or frames, their image index values are 0, 1, and 2. But we have 3 images in total, and image number will be equal to 3. So because it's one more, if our image index is greater than image number minus 1, then we are on the last frame. So we're on the final frame of that animation. And if that's the case, what we want to do is set our image speed to be 0. And image speed is the speed our animation is playing, so setting it to 0 means it stops playing. Now we still need to have our collision check and our animation check, because we're moving into the dead state and we need to know which sprite to use. So I'm going to put this one and this one, which is collision and the animation. I'll copy those, and I'm going to paste them down below the if. So they don't have to happen if the if happens, they happen all the time. Now the last thing to do is for our animation for the enemy, we actually don't have a state for dead. So let's go to our scripts, let's go to our animation enemy, and let's add a case for ES dead. So enemy state dot dead, and all we want to do is assign the instance variable to sprite, and we want to assign it to our str_dead, which is just our dead sprite. Now we're also checking facing, which we still want to keep doing, so I'm going to copy and paste that as well. We want to make sure we're checking the facing direction so that we can die in the correct orientation. And we're going to test the game now. So first we want to make sure when we interact with them, nothing happens. Great. It's only when we jump on their head. So what about if we jump underneath?
Alright, looks like we got a really bunch of errors here, so I'm going to solve these. And why am I doing this with the mic on is I'm podcasting with you guys too. So hey, if you're actually watching this stream, which we're going to be on right now, maybe you'll watch it later. You'll see what I do to fix this up. So I'm seeing right here, we have reference that does not exist in ES. So my bet is I have to prepare that in states. So let's go back to certificate game. So ES does not have that. So we can make that. Look at that, we made that. Motors easy. For everybody. Alright, so that's gonna solve these two. And I think it's gonna solve these two as well. And probably that last one. Yeah, so it's gonna do it. Alright, and even right off the bat, you can tell that at least one of the jumps works. We're not triggering the jump when we're doing this. Now, can we trigger the jump by just jumping up? We can do that. And it looks like we can know track with this guy. And you wanna know why that is? It's because we don't have a collision on that. Because we don't need it. He's done. Get it? Alright, cool. Back to the height kick.
Here we go, off the rails. You know, it's time to raise ourselves. It's freedom like you
That doesn't happen either because our VSP is not greater than 0. So let's jump on their head and they get affected then. So same for this guy, when we are not interacting with them from the top, nothing actually happens. So we don't take any damage or anything at the moment, but when we hit them from the top, they fall down and their animation stops. That's looking great. Now if there are other things you want to see in Drag and Drop, please leave a comment down below. Make sure you like and subscribe because it helps me to make content like this. Now over in my GameMaker course on Udemy, I add a sword and a shield and the player has a lot more interaction with the enemies. The course is currently the highest rated GameMaker 2 course on Udemy, if that's something you're interested in. If you're interested in making a detailed platformer just like this one, within GameMaker, using Dragon.
Alright, and I'm actually just about to hop off of here, but I'm going to show you guys basically what I'm doing right now, which is, again, I'm making your, making your save states for this stuff. So in case, like, you get to, like, say, tutorial 5, or tutorial 6, and you just completely screw up whatever your game is supposed to be, you will have at least one place to return to. And if you get mad over it not working right or not looking right, or you don't like the naming convention, you can either get mad at me or don't, because you kind of messed it up. Okay, so right now it's just saved as Slyddar Platformer 2, and the reason I call it that is because this is the second time on this specific computer that I've done this tutorial. I've done this one 4 times, I think. So this will be my 5th one, I believe. And a couple explanations for everything else. I use OBJ as my prefix, I use SCR as my prefix for scripts, room, I tend to do RM, but since we only have one room, I've not really needed to use it yet. And I tend to use SPR for my sprites. I got lazy on these guys, but eventually I will be changing the names of these sprites to meet the same suffix, or prefix rather. I think that's about it. Okay, so what I'm doing is saving the game, and I'm just going to close it. And I've already got this pulled up. If you're on one of our things at school, or if you're maybe on your home one, by default, GameMaker Studio says use documents, GameMaker Studio 2, and whatever your file is saved as. You can see a whole bunch of stuff like Get Them Flies Off My Granddad, a cute witch platformer, and whatever OG is. What is OG? Nothing apparently. Okay, so let's go back to here. Slyddar Platformer 2. You might have seen me do this earlier in the stream, but what I'm doing is use my right click, not my left click, my right click, dragging it to the desktop, and I'm just clicking copy here. I don't want to move it here. That would move the actual place for it. I'm trying to just copy it. And so Slyddar Platformer 2. I'm going to go ahead and rename it to Platformer 2. Look at that. I've got all these completed platformers right here. Just waiting for you guys to, well, mess up and all sorts of stuff. Okay, I think that about does it for me on this stream. I've been here for about 45 minutes, and yeah. Anyway, thanks all one of you that's currently here, but I'm out.